Hari Om, Namaste everyone. Welcome to day 58 of 108 days of Surya Namaskara or Sun Salutations challenge. So in this session today, of course, first we will go through our physical asana practice, and towards the end we will be discussing a very fundamental aspect of the 8 limbs of yoga, which is very much associated with what we are practicing on the mat. Asana, as you know, we have discussed in our Ashtanga yoga session that the limbs of yoga, among the limbs of yoga, asana comes as the third limb. So we talked about the yama and the niyama in the last 2 sessions. In this session, after our physical practice, we will talk about asana, what Maharshi Patanjali himself mentions about asana in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and you might be surprised with what is there. So stay tuned until the end and let's get on to the mat for our physical practice. Moving on to the third of the 8 limbs of yoga, and that is asana. In this case, asana is what we mean as the physical posture. In fact, literally the word asana means a seat. Okay, so as you know that in modern world, whether it's in the West and even now in the East, like in India itself, asana, the physical practice, is getting more and more popular for unknown reasons. Well, not unknown reasons, because it is something where you can see the cause and effect directly, right? You see the body is moving in certain ways and you see the results as an effect. So our logical mind, logical brain can connect the cause and effect. So no wonder why the more subtler practices like the antaranga sadhana, the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth limbs, or even the first and second, they are like taken for granted or they are not understood. But let's come to the physical posture, the asana. In the asana, what does Maharshi Patanjali says in the root text of yoga, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali? In fact, there are only 3 sutras that Maharshi Patanjali talks about in Yoga Sutras. Chapter 2, Sadhana Pada, 46th, 47th and 48th sutras. So let's review. 46th sutra, Sthira Sukhamasanam. So asanam has 2 qualities in it, and if a posture has these 2 qualities, they are called asana. What are those? Sthira. Sthira means stable, unwavering, okay, steady. Sukha. Sukha means easeful, without any pain, without any discomfort. So a posture with steadiness and easefulness is an asana, okay, a posture. So that's number 46th sutra. 47th sutra, Prayatna Shaithilya Shaithilyananta Samapattibhyam. Prayatna Shaithilyananta Samapattibhyam means by our sincere effort to lessen the natural tendency of restlessness of our body mind, and by concentrating on the ananta, the infinite, one can achieve this steadiness that we just talked about in the asana, the steadiness and the easefulness. So the steadiness and the easefulness is attained by sincere efforts to reduce, minimize the natural tendency of restlessness of the human body mind, and by focusing, by concentrating, by meditating upon the ananta, the infinite. Okay, and what happens then? In the sutra number 48 of second chapter, Maharshi Patanjali says, as the result of these 2 is tato dvandvanabhighatah, tato dvandvanabhighatah, tatah dvanda anabhighatah. Then at that time, or as a consequence, consequently, what happens? The impact, the effect, the sufferings arising from the dualities, dvandva. Abhighat means the sufferings, the impact, the negative impact, or the influences of the dualities melts away. Tato dvandvan abhighatah. Anabhighat means opposite of abhighat, right? Then the impacts and sufferings arising from the impacts of the dualities melt away. When somebody, by sincere effort to minimize the restlessness of the body mind and by meditating upon the infinite, when one is able to achieve the steadiness and easefulness in their posture, at that time one is able to achieve this Advaita, non-dual state of being. Okay, because if we think about it, all the uprisings of any and every suffering comes from this duality: raga, dvesha, good, bad, sat, asat. I like it, I don't like it. So that's a whole different story. So everything that arises in this mortal materialistic world of this body mind, whatever sufferings there are, it arises from the spectrum of these dualities. So when they are established in asana, by these 2 means of sincere practice of minimizing the restlessness of the body and by meditating upon the infinite, one is able to circumvent the impact of being in this dualistic world. With that, I would like to conclude this 58th session of 108 days of Surya Namaskara or Sun Salutations Challenge. I look forward to practicing with you and having you in tomorrow's session. Hari Om. Take care. Namaste.